Awesome, awesome. Sorry about that. I was hoping that at any moment that was going to smooth out. It didn't happen, so we're just going to use the course material to walk us through. Um, Let me just restate what the video was establishing, which is basically the phenomenon of disruption. Disruption is the state at which you are no longer able to predict from moment to moment what's going to happen. You can fall into disruption many different ways. You can fall into disruption from some type of physical circumstance, some type of social circumstance, some financial. It doesn't really matter how you get there, but when you're there, you know you're there because you are all of a sudden um, deeply overcome with a sense of dread that does not diminish whether the sun is out or whether it's raining. It follows you around like a cloak, like a very, very heavy cloak. And so the video introduces this concept of disruption, and the slides that we're looking at now is a series of practices that you can go through to begin to find safety in the midst of chaos. Because basically what happens in the experience of being disrupted, having your life disrupted, is you go from this world where everything is safe and known to a world where everything is unknown. And so that's chaos. And so what I have done here is collected a series of practices that we're going to go through now that's going to basically give you some ways to begin to reorient your life after some type of disruption or chaos. And so let's jump into this. I need to set up one thing and then we'll be ready to roll. Managing disruption, this is what we're talking about. And so if I pull up this, here we go. All right. So here in this first scene, you should be looking at healing conversation in progress. And this basically, the first chapter, this is a 5-chapter presentation. The first chapter talks about healing. And basically what we want to think about in this first idea is that even though we are surrounded by tremendous examples of disruption, including the things that happen in our own lives, we have a choice about what we put our focus on. And my plea is that if you're in the middle of disruption, I want to encourage you not to focus on what is happening around you. There is a story in the Bible where all of these disciples are in the boat with Jesus. And there's this storm that begins to well up in the ocean. And all of a sudden, the waves are so high that they begin to fall into the boat and cause everyone to feel like their lives are at jeopardy. And the way the story resolves is at the moment Peter, the disciple who steps out of the boat, at the moment that Peter takes his eyes off the waves, he has a standard that allows him to rise above and stay above the waves. And so that's basically a lesson from my vantage point or an instruction about how we have a choice in the midst of our chaos, in the midst of our disruption. We have a choice about where we put our focus, all right? And so that's what the conversation is already. We're focusing, instead of on the disruption, instead of on how many people are struggling right now, there are many people who are being rescued. If you want to think about the coronavirus, for example, for all of the people who we find out who are sick with corona, there's 100 who've been healed from corona. And so here again, by choosing to focus on the possibilities and the opportunities for healing, we take energy away from our low frequency vibration and convert it into a high frequency. And so that's what's happening here. As a backdrop, I use my own life experience. And for me, dealing with social media, keeping up with what everybody is in the middle of can be a very, very dangerous pastime, because most of the time in a season like this, the more dramatic your story is, the more dramatic your presentations are, the more attention that they get. And so it creates this sense where you are surrounding yourselves with other people who are also going through their own version of chaotic life. And so I put a snapshot from my own timeline just to kind of remind myself that, as I mentioned before, we have a choice. We can focus on healing. This is actually an image that I made at the end of last year, because even before this year started, I had a sense that this year was going to be crazy. And so I made this for myself. And what I love about this image is if you look at the word healing, and there's this entire spectrum of colors. And for those of us who do energy work, we know that for every color, there is a energy center in the body that controls a certain aspect of our being at a soul level. And so I love this image because it just reminds us that wellness, wholeness is not just an emotion. It's not just an imagination. There's actually a physical component that involves the body very much. And so that's why, at least for me, the way I found healing was through disruption. As painful as the experience was, I'm grateful for it, because if it hadn't been for that, I'm not sure where I would be right now. Here, this image is basically giving us another view, another idea of what I was talking about earlier with the law of attraction. We can have whatever reality we choose to imagine for ourselves, but we have to make a very intentional choice. We attract what we think, what we meditate on. And I used to think that that was only for positive things. I thought that as long as you were meditating on positive things, then you could have positive things. But it works the other way too. If your meditation is on how bad your life is, and how bad your days are, and how bad your job is, and how bad your relationships are, and how bad your neighbors are, and how bad your family is, and how bad your life is, you will only continue to perpetuate. You will only feed energy into this low frequency self, which we actually would prefer to have weaker, so that our higher frequency self, our stronger self, our more authentic, our more righteous self can lead our lives and lead our direction. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. And so here we go, talking about this choice, right? In the physical world, we are very much aware of the concept of cause and effect, right? If something happens, if you exert a force on a steel object, you expect that object to move, right? The same thing that happens in the physical world happens in the spiritual world, except a lot of times, we don't give credence to our intention. Our intention is as much of an important and impactful cause in our emotional and spiritual lives as our pushing, our energy, our using our body to exert force on a steel object is in the physical, which means if you can decide who you are and what kind of life you have, that can begin to happen for you as long as you are consistent in your intention. And so here in the image that we're looking at, and I hope I showed you this. I hope you just saw that. Right. Okay. Let me keep going. So here in this image, we see this glass, right? And some people see a glass, right? And they see it half what? Empty, right? Other people see this glass and they see it half what? Full, right? Well, where I am is not only do I intend and focus on the fullness of the glass, but I actually am able, through meditation and through these practices that I'm about to share with you, I'm able to go beyond the glass itself and imagine the source of the water itself, the river, the flowing river from which the water comes. And so the first thing we got to do, right, in our intention is to quit focusing on the emptiness of our lives, right? Quit focusing on what we don't have and how difficult it is to be us, and begin focusing on the bottom portion of the glass, which is the reservoir of resources that are at our disposal, waiting for us to intend a purpose for them, right? And then once we begin to think about resources, then we begin to think about sources of resources, right? The actual river from which the water flows. We don't have time to get into a detailed discussion about that, but I could spend a week talking about that river, and I'm not going to, but I'm tempted to. Okay, practice one. So here's our opportunity first. We talked about this, right? What we're about to do now is we're about to put ourselves in a position to begin to take control over our thought lives, right? That's what we were talking about in the beginning, right? Everything that we are experiencing right now was conceived at some point before, earlier, right? A farmer, right? If you're a farmer and you're planting, right? You don't go into the garden and expect to harvest something that wasn't previously planted, right? It would be ridiculous. But some of us in our spiritual lives, in our thought lives, in our emotion lives, we come to places in our lives as gardens and wonder why we don't have fullness, and we don't have wholeness, and we don't have health, and our relationships aren't adding to, but they're taking away. It's because we haven't done anything in the past to intend a different result in the present. And so that's what we're about to do right now. We're about to set an intention so that we may intend a different result. Okay, is that okay? All right, here we go. So I'm excited. I get excited. This is one of the things that happened to me. I'm excited. But right now, what we need to do is we need to prepare ourselves to use our intention. If you're sitting down, perhaps you sit up, straighten your back, relax a little bit, right? Feel yourself, feel your body, feel your breathing. Pay attention to your breathing. Our breath is so important. Let's breathe. Can we breathe together? Do you mind? So we breathe in through our nose and out through our mouths, right? Breathing is so important. Sometimes before thoughts come, our breath should come first, because in our breathing, that's where our energy, that's where our life force is in our breath. So we're going to take energy in, and we're going to breathe. Calm down, everybody. Ready? Practice one. Okay. If you've got your phone on, put it on Do Not Disturb just for a moment. This is going to take a second, but we want to honor this time we have together. And so what we're doing here is we're focusing on celebration. As I mentioned earlier, with all the things that's going on around us, we're tempted to be distracted with the waves of brutality, the waves of violence, the waves of sickness or chronic illness, or even death. In order to combat these negative images and thoughts, I want you to call to the forefront of your mind the intention that you want to manifest in your life, right? You don't want violence in your life. So look, we're not going to meditate on violence. You don't want sickness, so we're not going to meditate on sickness. So rather than grieve all of the tragedy around us, let's intend to celebrate the success stories. All right, can we decide to do that? All right, awesome. I'm going to take in a deep breath of energy, celebrating all the healing around us. Hold it for a moment, and then let it go. All right, simple, right? Simple. What you're going to learn, what you may discover, what I discovered, is vibrations are contagious. And if you stay around low vibration people, guess what kind of vibration you're going to have? Low, right? Okay. So now we're at chapter 2. In this conversation, right? I want to talk a little bit about the chaos that I was in. I was in the hospital in 2016 chronically ill. The doctors didn't think I was going to leave. In fact, they told me to make final arrangements. And my family came in from out of town to visit me. And the doctors were standing there and he was telling me, it's like, hey, just want to let you know, you're not going to leave. This is it for you. And when I heard those words, it didn't take me long, actually, but something inside me had a different intention. And lucky for me, there was a lady who worked at the hospital. Her name was Linda. She was a social worker. And in the process of her taking care of me, she shared with me her experience being in the hospital. She had been in a car accident several years before. And she shared with me a passage of scripture, a sacred text that gave her this motivation. And I was familiar with it. It was Psalm 23. And she shared it with me, and it strengthened my intention. So when the doctor then was standing before me telling me that I was going to leave the hospital, I had an inner conflict with what was happening in my external life. And so rather than focus on all of these signs, including this professional expert opinion that was telling me I wasn't going to leave, I focused on my intention to be healed. And so I told him, I said, I don't know about you, but I'm leaving this hospital. I'm not going to stay here. And so what I call the quickening, what I call that place that I found inside of me was, I call it my inner hero spirit. And so what I've realized is that when you are clear about your intention for wholeness, when things happen in your external world that do not align with your internal truth, you can close your outer eye to what you're experiencing and open your inner eye to what you know to be true inside, and live in this inward safe place. And as I mentioned earlier, your intention is strong enough not only to secure your inside, but it also, as it did in my case, it begins to secure your outside. So that's what section 2 is about. Chaos. That's another term for disruption, as I described earlier. And here, the intention is to do a deep dive into the soul. One of the things I discovered, and if the video had played, you would have been able to hear about this from that point, but it doesn't matter now. We're here now, right? What I discovered is a lot of people in the science world, in the physical world, they only can give opinions about what they know. Whether you have a doctor, or whether you have a specialist, or you have some kind of expert who's trying to give you advice, they are limited in their ability to speak into you what's going to happen. Just like that doctor was unable to see beyond the surface, see beyond the physical, right? But with your inner voice, right, you have the potential and the power to counsel yourself, to be your own advocate. It's critical that you have this skill, because a lot of the places, a lot of the institutions where we go for advocacy have closed and been unavailable for us, right? And I don't know about you, but I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned about the state of our community in a season where we are used to other people doing our healing work for us and our advocacy for us. No one can fight for you like you. No one can dream for you like you. No one can believe for you like you. But the problem is, some of us have lived lives that were so comfortable and so easy, we never had to exercise these muscles. And just like in the gym, right? You don't just go to the gym and go to the largest weight and be able to pick it up and move it around. No, there is this process of conditioning, right? You start with a smaller weight, And over a period of time in a routine practice, you develop the capacity to move larger weights. Well, some of us have ended up in heavyweight battles with featherweight training, right? Right? So what we're doing here is we're doing a deep dive into the soul. That's what's happening. And our intention here, even though we would rather everything always be easy and always be in the light, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but it's really loud here. Even though we would rather always be in the light, fire burns brightest in darkness. Can I get a witness?
Absolutely.
Come on, somebody. No, listen. If we was in a church right now, if we didn't have to social distance and do this thing virtual, if we were in the same room right now, I would be able to make eye contact with everybody here listening. And I'm telling you, there's power in intention, right? Do not negate the resources that you have, right? Don't curse the darkness. Chances are, if your life is anything like mine, that darkness had to come, right? Your life had to go off the rails, because what else was gonna get your attention? What else would have brought you here, right? I don't know about you, but all of the greatest lessons in my life, I've learned in the darkness. All of the greatest strengths that I'll use for the rest of my life come from the shadows, right? We love to spend time in high places on mountains, right? Clear skies, right? But for me, the places where my soul has grown the most is in the most painful places, right? But you know what I've discovered is you don't have control many times over what happens in your external physical world. But what you do have control over is your response, right? And so that's why we're setting up here. And I got to keep moving because we got to do another practice. But this thing is powerful. I want everybody to know we're not playing tonight. And I don't know where you are, but hopefully something has happened to let you know that this is a serious matter. And we can't afford to just sit here and trade pleasantries about, oh, look how great my life is, and look how wonderful my life has turned out. No, we live in struggle. And it is through our struggle that we are made the men, the women, the boys, and the girls that we are called to be. Not low frequency, not fear-based mongering, high frequency, worthy thoughts, right? That's what we're doing. Right? Here's our second practice. Again, we're going to straighten our backs. Whew, I need this just for me. Straighten your back, relax your jaw. If you want to, you can close your eyes. Right? You're just sitting there. You at home or in your office or in your car. Just listen. I got you. Close your eyes. That way you can focus on your intention of diving deep. Let's do that. Let's breathe. There's your energy right there. If you ever forget, if you forget everything else we talk about, your energy is in your breath. Just take a moment, still yourself. When things get crazy, there's your energy right there. The Bible says God breathed into man and he became a living soul, right? There's that power right there, that creative power, that ability to create a different life than you have right now. Our intention, our focus right now is on gratitude. Here is gratitude for your ability to share in the experiences of your loved ones. We're going to take a deep breath. We're going to hold it for a moment. And then out of your mouth, we're going to let the air go slowly, steadily, and easily. Right here, we're going to take a moment to consider how our lives are affected by the disruptions of our loved ones. Whew. This is a big one for me. This is a big one for me. I used to be a really selfish dude. I did. I used to think that this whole world, this whole existence was just about me. And I don't know, maybe I had to stop and reflect on why there are people around me. But this was a big one throughout this entire pandemic, man, because I'm at a state of peace and things are good with me now. I am so affected by the disruptions going on in the people around me. And it's so crazy. Sometimes I think I feel their pain more than they feel it. And so here, this last part of this practice, I want you to bring to your mind communication of those loved ones who are in the middle of going through things. Maybe someone who you used to see on a regular basis or used to talk to on a regular basis, but for whatever reason, it's been several days or several weeks or several months, maybe even several years. And as we close this second practice, I'd like you to consider reaching out. And even if for whatever reason you're nervous about seeing them or talking to them again, because I know every relationship doesn't deserve to be reconnected, even though you feel them, right? We can acknowledge that. Right now, as you sit here, send good vibrations and good energy in the direction from you to that person or those people. Take a moment and just love on them from where you sit. And be grateful for the opportunity that you have to even have known them and for them to know you. The slide says, let your faith be bigger than your fear. I love that. I had to include that. All right. So now we're in chapter 3. Chapter 3, I know you're not going to believe this, but chapter 3 is actually my favorite part of this discussion. Right? Right? You may say to yourself, okay, so how could you have a favorite part more favorite than everything else you've been talking about this whole time? But it's true. Because this is the part of the conversation where I get to talk about how I moved, how we can move from disruption to redemption, from order into chaos and back to order again, right? And so here we're talking about this pattern. There's this amazing pattern in the world that a lot of people know about, but not a lot of people think about or talk about, right? If you pay attention to any movie, any book, any game, any story, any character, all of these composite characters are examples of us to glean inspiration from, so that when we find ourselves in trouble, we know we don't have to stay there. And so the process from moving to where we are to where we want to be, we call a journey. And in the world of people who study this, they call this the hero's journey, right? And so here we are preparing ourselves to confront our fears, right? To focus on the wholeness that's at the core of our being, right? To realize that this disruption, this chaos that we've called to has come with purpose and intention in order to evolve us, to call us to evolve from our lower frequency cells to higher frequency. And that finally, belief picks up where tradition leaves off. I wish I had time to really elaborate on that, but if I elaborated on everything that there was to elaborate on, we would be here all evening, and we just can't do that. We just can't do that. I wish we could. Okay, and so backdrop. Our backdrop for this practice is steps of the journey. And I absolutely love this image. I don't even know how I found it. But I just think it's this perfect illustration of me. I'll say me, right? Because I can't hear you. I can't hear you. So I'm gonna say, this is a perfect illustration for me walking this line. Because some of us haven't had disruption yet, but some of us are on the edge, and that there's this way in which you can think on your life and your experience on that right side where everything is green and lovely, green pastures. He making me to lie down. Somebody know what I'm talking about. But then there's this scorched earth experience that at any moment, right? You miss a bill, right? You miss a payment, right? You make a phone call or forget to make a phone call. You say the right thing, you say the wrong thing, and all of a sudden, there we are in chaos, right? Steps of the journey. This practice is going to focus our intention on the literal process from moving from chaos back into order. All right. And so what I did here, I designed this. I'm very proud of it. It took me a very long time, but it is only a physical depiction of what you just saw in the last slide with some terms, some new terms that I want to share with you, right? So if you look at the bottom, right, you see you are here. Does everybody see that? A, you are here, A. And then there's a straight line pointing to the right on the bottom, going to B. You are here, this is where you are, and B is where you're going, your destiny, your purpose, your fulfillment, your highest self, right? Above that line is a circle that is depicting the exact same information except in circular form. So you start at 12 o'clock on the circle, right? Top, middle, top, you see you, and you see A. So you move clockwise around the circle from order through separation, and I'll explain separation in a minute, hopefully. And then around 3 o'clock, that's where order meets chaos. And here is where a lot of people live who are listening to this call, and where I lived in 2016, right? Disruption. You see that marked with 2. So we went from 1 to 2. And then as we pass through 6 o'clock, we're coming on the other side. We've confronted our disruption. We've set our intention. We've met our challenges. We've met our fears. We're now in resurrection. Now, resurrection is a very Judeo-Christian term. Some people have responses to anything that strikes a religion. Forget about that. I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about me. I'm talking about the point at which when you're down and counted out, like I was, there is another life, another reality, another form of you, another version of you that's going to walk out of that situation the same way I walked out of that hospital. I'm about to make myself happy. Yeah. Yes, right? That's what I'm talking about when I say resurrection, right? And then, right, resurrection takes us out of chaos, back into order, back into predictability, back into safety, back into normalcy, right? And we're returning back to where we came from. Now, I wish I had time to discuss that phenomenon of return, but because we're moving right along here, I'm going to give you 4 summary points to describe this chart, this journey, which I could spend the rest of my life talking about, and I still would scratch the surface. But I got 4 points for you. Are you ready? You guys were advised earlier, if you had a pen and a pencil, to make sure you're jotting notes. We will be mentioning later that all of these slides are going to be available for you on my website. So it's not a problem if you don't have a pen or pencil. But if you got one, you might want to start writing some notes down, because I'm about to tell you 4 things that are going to help you. Are you ready to be helped? We're going to take a breath. You ain't ready. I can tell you you're not ready. We're going to breathe first. Right? All right. All right. I think we're ready now. We ready? Here we go. 4 points. A hero's journey summarized in 4 points. First, at the top, we see hero, right? That's you. You're the hero. You didn't know it, but I'm telling you now, you're the hero. From the hero, we learn that the one who is willing to confront chaos, right? That's you. And evolve as disruption demands, right? He is also the one most likely to find wholeness when the world around him remains in chaos? See, I told you he was going to need a pen. I told you. I tried. I went back. We breathed. I gave you a time to breathe it in. And you know what? I'm going to read it again, but I'm not going to read it as slow. I'm going to hurry on. From the hero, we learned that the one who is willing to confront chaos and evolve as disruption demands, he is also the one most likely to find wholeness, while the rest of the world looks like it does. Chaos. Amen? All right. Second, from the journey, we learn that when traditional institutions and approaches fail, it is the belief-grounded individual who is most likely not to survive. We're not talking about surviving today. We're talking about thriving, right? We learned that when traditional institutions and approaches fail, it is the belief-grounded individual who is likely to thrive. Got that? Third, from the disruption, we learn that confronting what terrifies us the most teaches us our greatest lessons. We already said that. You already knew that, right? We covered this already, but I need to say it again. And here, finally, the fourth point, from the resurrection, we learn that when your world falls apart and you find yourself somewhere new, in that new place is everything you need, here again, not only to survive, but to thrive. All right? How we doing? Well, we're good.
Doing
Okay.
good. This is a lot of information.
It's a lot of information. I told you. See, that was providence. That video didn't play because we wouldn't have time for me to get all excited like I am. All right. I need to drink some water. Is that okay? Can I have? It's a water break. If you got water right now, let's drink together. Amen. Amen. Amen.
Not communion.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the intention here for the practice that we're about to share is to make a choice that sets you up for the results that you want. Simple, right? So here we go. We're going to take a moment and think through the karmic laws. What I mean to say is, if what you are giving in energy is negative, what are you going to get? Negative energy, right? So what we're going to do instead is we're going to raise our frequency again. This is what we're doing. This is the theme here. We're going to be intentional about not only in this moment. See, what I need you to remember is that what we're doing is we're practicing in this moment what you can do on your own, right? You have to build a routine, right? And so in this moment, we're going to be intentional about every walk, every thought, every word, every deed, every feeling, every plan, right? So here we go. You ready? Here's another practice. So we're going to align our bodies again, back straight. Unclench your jaw. Close your eyes if you want to. Quiet your mind. Pay attention. Find your breath. Take a moment. Now, bring to the forefront of your mind an important journey from the chapters of your life. If you want to, you could use an example from your childhood or your youth, when you were in school, when you lived at another place, when you were in a different relationship or different situation, or something from your adult years. Could be yesterday, could be a week from now, whatever you want. What I want you to do is to think of your journey in a series of steps, just like we went through a moment ago. This will be moving from your A to your B. What is the process? How do you get, or how did you get from where you were to where you are, right? Think about that as a process. Think about the number of steps it took you. You know, it could be an errand, right? It could be you needing to go to the store, right? So you had a series of steps. Think about those steps. What you had to do first, what you had to do next, the process, right? And what I want you to do is think about a traumatic or scary or unknown time. Maybe you were in a different city and you didn't know how to get from where you were to where you needed to be, and so you got lost. Or think about a time when you needed to travel during inclement weather. Maybe you were driving, maybe you were on a bus, maybe you were on a plane, and you had some level of anxiety. What I want you to do is to focus, find the step that was the most difficult to complete, right? Pick a step. If there were 4 steps in your process to move from where you were to where you are, find the step that scared you the most. And then after you've got that settled in your mind, now I want you to find the step that gave you the most joy or satisfaction. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to keep both of those steps at the forefront of our mind while we finish this exercise. Does that work? All right. Now, consider the role that both of those steps played in your journey. And think about the amount of energy it took you to complete your fear-filled step versus your love step, right? I want you to reflect back and account for energy loss. Try to help somebody with this. What I want you to consider is it probably was a whole lot easier for you to do the joyful step than it was for you to do the fearful step, right? So if there was a way that we could remove some of the fear from our difficult experiences in life, we necessarily would have more energy to give to our love experiences in life. Are you tracking with me? Because some of us have loved ones who are trying to go through this thing with us. And I'm telling you, some of them aren't feeling supported and considered, because if you're anything like me, I felt like it took everything in me when I was at my low frequency self. It took everything in me just to keep it in the middle of the road. I wasn't really trying to minister and take care of all the people who may be depending on me and trying to hang on and participate in this journey with me. But what I need you to know in this moment is if we could, through these practices, pull negative energy away from even our most traumatic experiences, we would have more energy, not only for ourselves, to love on ourselves, because some of us need to just spend time. Some of us, it's good that the folks who were trying to hang on have let go, because that can be a depletion that we may not be able to afford, right? But if you're in a situation where there is a worthy colleague trying to do this thing with you, we have more energy not only to love on ourselves, but also to love outside of ourselves, right? And remember that the more energy you have, the easier it will be for you to move from your A, the place where you are, to your B, the place where you want to be, right? And every time you complete a journey, every time you complete a process, you evolve into a higher version of yourself. You begin then to not only rise in high frequency when something great is happening, but you begin to kind of have a new normal that is higher than your normal used to be. That's what a lot of us, I'm hoping, this is what's happening for me, and I hope it's happening for you through all that's going on right now. I'm changing my expectations about what level of frequency I can vibrate on. I've decided I'm a high frequency being, regardless of what's happening on the outside of me. And it's just a choice. It's a choice. It's an intention that I made, right? So I'm sitting here and I'm getting a sense of where we are in the time. And I know we wanted to be very intentional about not just making this this part, the part of the conversation that we're in now, I'm kind of talking at you and I'm leading you into things. But what I'm hoping, G. Allen, is that people will take advantage of this time, because I've said a lot, right? I put a lot out there. And I'm hoping that there's an opportunity for someone who's listening and feeling and remembering and reflecting to ask me something about this, right? What do you think?
Well, I would like to start off those questions. Being an HIV outreach specialist here in the Coastal Health District of Georgia, I'd be interested what you'd have to say to a newly diagnosed HIV positive individual experiencing their disruption.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. And you know this, the audience doesn't know this, but the reason I actually presented this material this way is with that community, with that population in mind. And that population, I mean, those of us who have chronic conditions that either everybody knows about or nobody knows about. The diagnosis itself can be a huge disruption. To get information that you are not the healthy, invincible being that you always thought you were, that you have responsibilities now to maintain good health, along with all the other things that were going in with your life before this event. So I would say the first idea is to make parallel whatever other experiences I'm talking about in this presentation to the experience of a person in a situation like yours who's dealing with a chronic illness, to say, hey, okay, so your disruption is clear. We know exactly what it is that moves you from order into chaos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so from that, I would just say the work that you have to engage in order to maintain wholeness all becomes part of your practice. And even though someone may be telling you, hey, you know, you need to eat these things, or hey, you need to exercise so many times a week or a day, or hey, you need to take these medications so many times a day, with each physical action, you can also have an internal intention for healing and wholeness. And I'm telling you, in addition, there is this kind of synthesis, maybe a word, where your treatment plan, your medication, your exercise, your nutrition, it all mixes together with a healthy intention and healthy emotional and spiritual practices, so that the one thing begins to feed off the other. And so you can begin to evolve even in the midst of what for some people is not a great hand to be dealt, but it's your hand.
Okay.
Did I
Uh,
get to the crux of your question?
I believe you did. I believe you did. I posed the questions and some of the notes on social media as you were presenting. And one of the questions that I got back was, is disruption always something that occurs internally, or can disruption be something that occurs upon us or happens to us from an outside force? What does that look like?
Oh yeah, great. Thank you. For me personally, my disruption was very external. And when I originally conceived this, I thought about it as being, you know, a pandemic, diagnosis, bankruptcy, a divorce, losing your job, becoming homeless, right? An external event. But it applies the same, whether it's external or internal. I will say, I think at least for me, I think that there were small internal disruptions for several years in my life.
Mhm.
That because I distracted myself with the busyness of life, I didn't hear, I didn't see. And that's another hope I have for this presentation. It would be great. It would be great if we could be moved by internal disruptions. And oh my God, I wish I had paid attention, but I was just so occupied. And so, but regardless of whether your disruption is internal or external, you can respond, and these practices work just as easily. And I think if you can begin to do some of the things that we did today, quiet your mind, sit quietly in a peaceful space, do those things, go walking in a nature reserve, those things that still you and quiet you, you may be able to begin hearing some of those internal disruptions before they become external. I think that would be amazing.
Awesome, awesome. I'm going to look back to see if I see any more questions on the social media. In the meantime, are there any of the participants currently inside of the session that might have any questions or any comments? Okay. Well, if not, I'm going to continue. They're really going to town with this conversation. So,
No, I know.
there
I
was
know,
a
but what? Go ahead. What you gonna say?
there was a follow-up to the internal versus external, and someone pointed out that a lot of times it looks like it may seem like the major disruption is happening from an external force, but then it reveals what's really the turmoil or whatever the real trauma is or whatever the real conflict is that's taking place internally. And that's the real conversation that probably needs to be had with oneself.
Let me tell you, I'm so glad you said that.
They are talking on Facebook.
Oh no, I would be talking along with them. I wish, and I can't wait to go back and hear what some of these comments was. Let me tell you, I got to share something with you. I do inner work, right? This is one of the things that I now enjoy doing, inner work. And one of the things that I was considering, I was told to consider was when either I pop off at somebody else or somebody else pops off at me.
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do many times with anything that's actually happening in the external.
Mm-hmm.
It may sound obvious now, but man, I tell you, when I heard that, it went. It's like my mind started traveling back to all these conversations and all these things that all the places that I've either acted out or been acted out on. And if I had in that moment been able to consider that possibly whatever's being said to me or whatever I'm saying has absolutely nothing to do with the other person in the room, I would have been able to keep my energy on a higher frequency instead of trading off and getting into the muck, right, with them and getting all dirty. Because what happens there is, even though they initially were in the wrong, once I respond to them in kind, I have added negative energy to the situation that, according to the laws of karma, I am now responsible for. So even though I started out as an innocent, I now have consequences for whatever I said or did in response to their foolishness. That thing blessed me. That thing blessed me. But you know what? In order to have the presence of mind to slow down an interaction with someone and have the presence of mind to consider, maybe this person has just cussed me out because they are in the middle of a chaotic situation in their lives and they're not sure whether they're going to be able to make it to the end of this day alive. If I could have had that kind of compassion, if we can have that kind of compassion, can you imagine how different it would be to live?
Absolutely. Wow. Wow. Well, I do have a follow-up here. So, of course, the common disruption that we'd be speaking about would be healthcare or just well-being in general. And so I'm going to tweak their question and make it more of a follow-up to my initial question. this is in regards to families of
Oh yeah.
or loved ones of
Oh yeah.
persons who are experiencing illness. So,
Oh yeah.
what would you say to that family member of the initial um, new HIV positive case that you just got finished speaking to?
Oh, right. The family member who's trying to love on and be supportive and to come
Mm-hmm.
to ride this journey with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Because you spoke about those family members and those loved
yeah,
ones that are on the
yeah,
journey with us.
yeah. Whew. Let me breathe into that just for a moment because I have to bring to the forefront of my mind my ability to share about my experiences. And I tell you, I think actually, and this is just commentary before I begin answering your question. I told my mother several years ago, I said, I think God knew what I was strong enough to handle and allowed me to experience some things in the physical world that I would not want my loved ones going through. And I don't even know if they could handle it. So I said that to say it is perhaps far more difficult to be a loved one of a person with disruption and in chaos than it is to actually be in the middle of the chaos. Um, and so if you are a loved one, I think, um, I think there are opportunities here we go, rather than attempting to understand the disruption that you are not living through.
Mm-hmm.
You can connect on the disruptions you have lived through. And when you want to talk to your loved one who's in the middle of disruption, rather than asking them, how do they feel? Which is a very common, tempting question, which, at least for me, I never want to be asked how I feel if I'm in the middle of a disruption. If I wanted you to know how I feel, I would tell you how I felt. But what I am open to is you to share with me what you feel, what you experience, what you see, what you hope, what you dream about, what you imagine, what you remember. You know, I have room for that. I have room for that because in that moment, you hear that, right? Come on, airplane.
Back when you're in the country.
I know that he's trying to get in on this moment. There is a synthesis of energy. And the moment you start talking about how you feel and what you remember and what you hope, I then get energy. I get strength from you talking about your feeling and your imagination toward me. It
Okay.
actually begins to lift my frequency without me feeling like I need to try to share everything I'm feeling that I don't think you're going to understand or relate to anyway.
Sure.
So that would be my advice or my counsel, my guidance. Maybe it's a better word.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, I don't see any additional questions in the chat box currently. Um, but with that, could you show us where we could get, I know you mentioned earlier that we could basically get this full presentation that you were going to give us today with the video and everything. Could you show us where we could find that?
I certainly can. I'm really good. You're really good at segues, by the way. You are. I feel like I'm in the presence of greatness even now.
Oh,
Yeah.
you've been talking to John.
Okay, thank you. Now they're giving me information that I don't need right now. All right. Can you see?
I can. So is this where, oh, okay, so it's a course preview.
Yes.
Will
Yes.
we get everything that you were kind of showing us and walking us through today?
Yes. So I got through, I think, 3 practices. And so this course preview gives you the video, which we weren't able to watch. It's right there. It's a YouTube link to that video. And then underneath that video are the slides that we've only gotten through half of. And then there's this really cool downloadable meditation instrumental. I'm a musician. I love music. Everything I do to music. And so this is just a 1 minute composition that I think is good for creating intentional space. You could play it in the morning, in the afternoon, in the car, walking, whatever, just to kind of put you in a different space. All right.
Okay.
And so then underneath that, you've got all of the practices: practice 1, practice 2, practice 3. And these numbers don't correlate to the slides, right? But they're in order of the slides, right? So the first one is practice 1. The second one we did is practice 2. The third one, and so on.
Okay.
All the way to practice 6. And then at the bottom, if you want access to this full experience, which, we were able to scratch the surface on this evening, you can enroll. And there's the enrollment. You put your name first in the first box, last in the second box, your email, and your number. And then you have to click the box, right? And then you click enroll. And then instantly your information comes and connects to me. And let me tell you what I plan on doing with every enrollment. I plan on spending quiet personal time in a meditation, positive energy toward every name that I get, so that I can begin thinking positive and sending energy in your direction. And hopefully you're going to get something from, either both the preview course, which you have right here, or the full course, that's going to help you begin creating a practice, a routine that's going to build your capacity to evolve from low frequency living in thought and intention to high frequency living thought and intention.
So
And
it really is like building a muscle. It really is practice.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is why I'm so glad I was able to, go through these practices with you today. They're very simple. There's nothing hard about any of this, right? It's basic. We're born with the ability to do this. And I'm just reminding you of something that you already know. And so at the top, you'll see there's like a home page, and then there's a page for me, Chauncey McGlathery, right? It has my bio. And then there's a third page that has contact information, just in case maybe you have questions. Maybe you have insights. Maybe I said something that rubbed you the wrong way or the right way. Whatever you want to say, you can say it here in the contact box.
Okay, awesome. Well, we have 7 minutes remaining. I have one final question, and I don't know if you have some thoughts that you'd like to share with us.
Sure.
I had a question, but I think my question just changed. So
Okay.
What is a practical tip that you can give us? We are all experiencing simultaneously the same, yet very different for each one of us, disruption between issues on a governmental level, as well as, that's a good question. I'm gonna pause my question in a moment, or the pandemic. What is the practical tips for us to go through that? And if you would answer that quickly, because we've got a really good question in here that I want to get.
Yeah, I can. And I've already alluded to it. You have to unplug. Because this disruption that you're talking about now is corporate and global, you have to unplug because everybody's drained. Everybody's energy is low in this area. And so you have to distance yourself. You have to go away off to yourself. And for me, I find a place to walk, a place to exercise, a place to meditate, away from disruption. I turn my phone off, or I don't even bring my phone. I turn my notifications off. I sign out. I don't check emails. For me, there's a certain period of the day where all of that stuff stops. My access stops. And
So what you're saying is we need to intentionally set time to be free from all of that chit and chat and clutter.
yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
and turn your and if you do it, if you have to do it around your computer or around your phone, turn your notifications off. It's just really interesting for me. I noticed the moment I decide to be intentional about creating private space for me, that's when all of a sudden texts will come from all over the universe.
I love
It just at that moment, right? Just for no good reason. It's a conspiracy. But I think if you put your phone on do not disturb and focus and tell people in your household, hey, this is my time. I'm about to get my meditation on. If you want to tell me, be in your business, say, I'm about to be minding my business. You mind yours. And when I'm finished, I'll come find you.
So, Mr. John Malone asked this, well, he forwarded us a question from his social media as well. What do we do if our job is our main source of disruption?
Woo!
I wonder if he's on Facebook because they're on fire on my end too.
That'll preach.
We got 4 minutes to answer it.
Yeah, I know.
Which means you got 3. Go for it.
I know. First of all, I would say get your resume together.
Okay.
Get your resume together. Get your resume together, because if you decide that you are in a low frequency environment, you can't be healthy there anyway.
Okay.
That's real quick. I did that in 3 seconds, didn't I?
So prepare your exit. Okay. What is some work that we can do while we're there, though? Is that the work that we do while we're there?
Yeah, that's the first thing you do, I think. Next thing you can do is mind your energy and be on the lookout for low frequency interaction, and completely refuse to engage on anything that is not making you better, stronger, wiser, and higher, more like your normal, your natural, your highest self. Refuse.
I love it.
Because it's funny. I'll only say this: energy will peep you out. I remember the first time I made this presentation, and I had to walk through a crowd of people. By the time I moved, I had this like I was filled with energy like I am now. By the time I walked past 100 people, I was exhausted. And so once I got into the room where I was presenting, I found a couple of friends, and I said, "Look, you guys, I'm depleted. They've just stolen my energy. I need it back." And so we all intended that I should be restored, and we didn't even say any words. We just took a moment and intended, and I got it all back like that.
I love it. Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and close out. This has been the 6 p.m. Session from the Journey to Change Virtual Symposium, Connections. This session was titled Disruption, Celebrating One's Purpose and Design, Acknowledgement of Your Confrontation and Accepting the Challenge of Building a New Life Using the Lessons and Insight of Your Entire Journey. Chauncey McGlathery was our facilitator. We thank you, sir. I'm going to turn this over to Evan Pitts so that he can give us some notes as we exit.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you, Chauncey. This was really fulfilling for me. And I do have some questions that I would like to ask you in just a moment. But just to move this forward, there are 2 links that are in the chat box. The first one is for the Journey to Change conference booklet. You can explore that when you get a moment. It's got the bio for each speaker that's facilitating a session this week. And then also there's the Journey to Change quick guide, which is an agenda of all of these sessions for the week with the Zoom link for quick access. And what I'm about to post now is the evaluation link. If you would take a moment to complete the evaluation, let us know how you feel about today's session. We'd really appreciate it. I'm sure Chauncey would too.
Absolutely.
And we really thank you all for coming. That's all I got.